Dearly beloved, as we gather today in this Church of Woke to sacrifice the rights of Coloradans on this altar of good intentions, it is a privilege to be here to offer some level, modicum of resistance to bills that did not get any better in the last 2 days. So 1313, here we are again, more moving towards the abolition of private property. That is the goal. So when I look at this map of what is going to be a transit-oriented community, anything within the bus line, within these radiuses, when I look at the printout of this, and I know you all got this, it's about 90, it's probably easy within 80 to 90% of all of Denver. So immediately what this means is every single parking lot is now available to become a high-rise. So we're going to immediately, possibly, remove any parking. And one of the reasons that we like Colorado is we like the open spaces. And you bring a bill like this in to eliminate open spaces. And we say, well, we want everybody that wants to live in Colorado to be able to live in Colorado, and that's fantastic. But what happens if you create an unlivable situation in Colorado after you've created a zoning, an unsustainable level of zoning? So it's not really even just creating a zoning. This is overriding the zoning. This is going into every single community to ostensibly solve a problem that usually mostly are problems that Denver has, and then we legislate to impose in this case, a really bad solution on the rest of the on the rest of the state. So, if we think about any of the parking lots around here, why would they not become immediately high-rise apartments? High-rise, 7-story, whatever you want to call them. They're going in here a little higher than that. So every single parking lot, because now every single parking lot that turns into an apartment complex is not required to have parking. And if you do offer a limited level of parking, that parking can be offered as a premium. When I was in New York City for grad school, those slots went for $600 or $700 a month, just the parking slot. So I don't see how we're solving a problem. And then our constituent last talked about I didn't look at the volume of this, but having to change the water lines out from 18 to 24 inches. Well, that's, you'd think, oh, that's 6 inches, but if you go by the radius squared, pi r squared, that's a significant jump up in water volume that is required to support this. And then it's also required to support the sewer. And then you also need to support the electrical. Now, we know that based on the electrical plans that we have in the state, which are none, that there really is no agenda to have, and this is kind of proof this solves the problem, because if you were to say that everybody was going to require an EV vehicle, which lose on average about $64,000 per vehicle by way of subsidies from the government because they are such a bad idea. And of course, those are premised on even that is premised on the slave labor of third world countries. So we have bad idea, compounding bad idea, compounding bad idea. And this is a bad idea in terms of what's the goal here? The goal is to make busing, to make mass transit, to make those traffic jams moving in the wrong direction at a lumbering speed, make them cost effective. And how do you do that? Well, in order to make mass transit, so now the people of Colorado are at the whim of mass transit. We want to make Colorado, this body wants to make mass transit viable. It is currently subsidized at over $2 per passenger mile. $2 per passenger mile, again, a slow-moving traffic jam lumbering in the wrong direction. And that's a perfect analogy for the government this body is creating on a regular basis. So instead of creating a system and saying, hey, maybe this mass transit isn't working, so we should do something about it, maybe we could make it more effective, maybe we could make it more desirable. In a typical fashion, in what I would suspect would be in terms of policy, that would be foisted on a state by statists that view the state as the ultimate authority, that view the state as the ultimate goal, the true measure of worship in a Hegelian sense, as we're here today, that instead of creating something that people actually desire to enter into on a free market basis in an exchange of good for good, what you do is you make it a matter of coercion. So you make it a matter of coercion, and you say that the people of Colorado will be taxed, and if they don't comply, if they don't submit, if they don't yield, if they don't buckle, if they don't bend the knee to this agenda, then they won't get their tax money back. So this bill takes the money that is extracted from the citizens of Colorado under the threat of force or the actual use of force. It's an enslaving agenda. That's what we have. That's what you're promoting. And instead of making something that is viable, where people will enter into it in an exchange of good for good voluntarily, again, it becomes a matter of compulsion. And then what happens with that? What happens when you you change all of the zoning, just arbitrarily change all of the zoning to match these maps to comply with this that covers pretty much every place in Denver, every place in Colorado Springs, every place in Fort Collins, and then you put a train from Fort Collins or Pueblo all the way up to Fort Collins. And then everything within a half mile of that train line becomes that. Now you're going to have high-rises stretching all the way from Pueblo to Fort Collins, perhaps, until people decide that they don't want to live here, and then we just have this housing bubble that we've created. Who is this a benefit to? Well, largely, I get the emails. It's a benefit to the developers who want to be able to develop on every spot that's they possibly can, and parking restrictions are in the way. So what do? You don't say that, hey, we want to build a high-rise on every parking lot. You wrap it in some emotionalism, like say, well, this is affordable housing. Well, what is affordable housing? Well, affordable housing can be a luxury apartment based on 2 incomes, as long as it's not 30%. Now, last year, there was a bill that said you couldn't ask for more proof than 50%, than half of the income. A renter didn't have to show that they had 3 times the rent. Well, all that did was increase the rent immediately, because that increased the amount of money available, and then you added, so instead of actually solving the problem, instead of addressing the problem, this body, once again, takes its statist mindset, says what's going on in the nuggets of these individuals here, and it would be cynical to think that they would do this for campaign donations. But this is going to make the problem worse. You don't have the infrastructure available. You don't have the water infrastructure. You don't have the electrical infrastructure. And are those in here that say, before we do anything in a neighborhood, we're going to require the electrical, the sewer, the water? We're going to require all of these.
Representative DeGraff, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. No, you're going to impose this on the state of Colorado wholly across the board. Create a zoning nightmare, all for the good intentions of what you call affordable housing. This is going to make the problem worse, just like most of the other things in this body make the problem worse. Address the actual issue. The issues are the cost of energy, the cost of regulation. Those are what are driving people out. Thank you.
AML Bacon.
Good morning, members, and thank you. Didn't mean to take too much time on this bill, and I'd also like to just start by asking just for a little bit of latitude from you, Madam Speaker, if you'd give it to me. I just wanted to ask ahead of time. I just wanted to say thank you all for being here on a beautiful Sunday. I know some of us may be in church. We were just opened with welcoming to be here in the Church of Woke. I just want to say to you all on behalf of the community that coined that term, the term wokeness is about opening up your minds so that you are able to understand the space that you're in to make conscious decisions and also have conscious awareness of how you might have been socialized to inferiority. And so when I hear that word woke, I do hope that we are able to use that mindset here as we talk about bills and debate them. But also I just want to note that the opposite of woke or being awake is to go back to sleep. And that is not something that my community opts into doing, and I do not appreciate it being used as a term of derision, particularly as we're debating policy. Thank you for the grace.